Yesterday afternoon, as I was preparing for Shabbat, how does this work? Here we go. I took a break and I took a blue ribbon and went outside to Dearborn, and I tied this ribbon around a very special tree. It's a small tree. You may have walked past it 100 times. It's what we call the tree of life here at Holy Blossom. We planted it 5 years ago, so it's a young tree. We planted it in memory of Joyce Feinberg, Aleha Shalom. Joyce, you may recall, was raised here at Holy Blossom. She was educated here. She was married here. And then she went with her husband to raise a family in Pittsburgh. And she was one of the 11 who were slain 5 years ago. It's hard to believe this Shabbat is the yard site, is the anniversary of that massacre, the most deadly attack on any North American house of worship. And some of Joyce's cousins are here today to remember her, to say Kaddish for her. This blue ribbon is the new symbol emerging to call attention to the hostages held in Gaza. And so, how does that ribbon on that thin tree, how do they speak to one another? How do they plant themselves, root themselves in the story of Jewish history? This is the question that has been, one of the questions that has been haunting me this week particularly. And I'd like to reflect on it a bit with you now. What happened 5 years ago felt different. You may recall that we were not alone. Many people came to be with us in the main sanctuary on that following Shabbat. Muslims, Christians, secular Canadians all rallied to our side. And we knew we were not alone in facing a hateful enemy. Instead, the enemy was alone. And you recall the rings of peace that enveloped and symbolically protected 12 different synagogues across the city. And it spoke to who we are as Canadians and who we are as Jewish Canadians. And there were so many people with us, so many good people with us. By contrast, today, I don't think I'm alone in feeling so alone. I'm hearing stories from many congregants, reports of how lonely this feels now. Where are all those good people? And when we do find them, because there are good people, we have to embrace them and thank them and reinforce their good instincts. This room holds 150 chairs. Look around. See one another. Some of these people you have known for years. Some of these people you've never met before. Maybe you're here for the first time yourself. And yet there is among us an invisible, invincible, palpable bond. We have all been drawn to this holy place on this holy day, gravitated towards one another, towards our people, towards our God. This room holds 150 chairs or so. Look around. Get a sense of what 150 people look like. And now imagine 220 held in Gaza. Imagine 1,400 gone. 1,400 brothers and sisters massacred in one day. These facts alone make very clear that we must protect our people from further harm. Rooting out Hamas, who have proven themselves to be hell-bent on annihilating our people, who have written in black and white in their charter for all the world to see. The only responsible response is to defeat Hamas. And that response is underway at this very hour. May God protect the soldiers who are involved in that work. May God protect the innocent ones who are caught in the crossfire. We do not celebrate this war. We hate everything about this war. It is brutal and it is painful, but it is necessary. We hold our breath and we pray that it will be over soon. But know that it is what the rabbis call a milchemet mitzvah. It is a necessary war, a required war. The rabbis say there are categories of wars. There are those that shouldn't be at all. There are those that are permitted, and there are those that are required. For the sake of defending our people and defending the state of Israel, this is a necessary war. Menachem Mendel of Chernobyl said, "Let the people of Israel hold their heads high in pride as they contemplate their ancestor Abraham." I wonder if Abraham knew that when he responded to the call of Lech Lecha, was he setting the course of history? Did he know that? We know that now. Our spiritual ancestor, the first monotheist, the first patriarch. But did he know it? When God said to Avram, "Go forth from your land, your birthplace, your father's house, to the land that I will show you, I will make of you a great nation," God says, "and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and it shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and all the families of the earth will be blessed through you." God tells Abraham right up front, Jewish history is beginning. Human history is changing, and you are an agent of that change. You are a pivotal character, and the way that you walk through the world now, the way you respond to the call Lech Lecha, has everything to do with setting that course. So I believe that Abraham must have been aware of how his own story would give way to a much larger story. This hard week, this week after getting up from a kind of collective Shiva, demands that we begin to try to understand what October 7th means against the backdrop of Jewish history and the projection, the trajectory of Jewish history. Where does this massacre sit in our never-ending story? And I find myself resisting the possibility that this really is a watershed moment. Intellectually, I can understand it, that this changes everything, that what we thought to be true, what we knew to be true, may no longer be true. I resist it, and I want to believe instead that this is just another hard moment, and that we will rally like we always do, and Israelis will rally like they always do. But I have a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that tells me, no, this is entirely different. And we need to grapple with that possibility. We are living history. And it shakes us to know that we are living one of those watershed moments of history. In 1983, Rabbi David Hartman wrote an important article about two kinds of Jews. He says there are Auschwitz Jews and there are Sinai Jews. Imagine two mountains, one above ground reaching towards the heavens, that we call Sinai. Another mountain which is inverted, upside down, drilling down to the depths of darkness, that is the mountain called Auschwitz. Sinai is where the Jewish people received Torah and entered into the covenant and met the divine and committed ourselves to a life of mitzvot. Auschwitz is where that covenant seemed to be broken, where God seemed to be absent, where mitzvot were nearly impossible to fulfill. And so in 1983, still in the shadows of the Holocaust, Rabbi David Hartman asks, as a Jew who chose to leave Montreal to make Aliyah and a home in Jerusalem, as a Jew who lived in that long shadow of the Shoah, he asked, what kind of Jew are you? Are you an Auschwitz Jew or a Sinai Jew? I'll read just an excerpt of this important article. In the 20th century, we have again become a traumatized nation. The ugly, demonic forces of anti-Semitism have horrified our sensibilities. We will never forget the destruction of millions of Jews in World War II. Many, therefore, justify and interpret the significance of our rebirth in terms of Jewish suffering and persecution. He's saying the state of Israel was born from that suffering. And he is critical of that storytelling. Rabbi Hartman continues, one often hears in speeches in the Knesset and at UJA fundraising dinners phrases such as, never again will we be vulnerable, never again will we expose our lives to the ugly political forces in the world. Our powerful army has eliminated the need to beg for pity and compassion from the nations of the world. And then Rabbi David Hartman challenges this view. He says, while I respect and share in the anguish expressed in these sentiments, I believe it is destructive to make the Holocaust the dominant organizing category of modern Jewish history and of our national renewal and rebirth in the land of Israel. It is both politically and morally dangerous for our nation to perceive itself essentially as the suffering remnant of the Holocaust. And it is childish and often vulgar to attempt to demonstrate how the Jewish people's suffering is unique in history, while other people suffer too. That is the point of view of an Auschwitz Jew. And you don't have to have been in Auschwitz to be an Auschwitz Jew. When I came to Toronto, I met so many descendants of survivors, and I began to understand that much of this city's Jewish community is organized around some of these principles that Rabbi Hartman calls into question. Instead, he points to Sinai, and he desperately says that the eternal Sinai covenant has shaped the Jewish consciousness throughout the millennia. It was not Hitler who brought us back to Zion, but rather belief in the eternal validity of the Sinai covenant. One needs not visit Yad Vashem in order to understand our love for Jerusalem. It is dangerous to our growth as a healthy people if the memory of Auschwitz becomes a substitute for Sinai. The model of Sinai awakens the Jewish people to the awesome responsibility of becoming a holy people through a life of mitzvot. And I will tell you proudly, I was raised thoroughly as a Sinai Jew. And I have proudly, deliberately, with Adam, raised our children as Sinai Jews. The language we speak is the language of meaning and purpose, of fulfilling mitzvot that will advance not only the Jewish people, but all the peoples of this world, every one of them created in the image of God. A Sinai Jew is one who longs for righteousness and justice that overflows and reaches every corner of the earth. Judaism, for a Sinai Jew, is a source of joy and uplift, Sinai Jews face the future, affirming life. I have oriented my entire rabbinate and my entire life to Sinai Judaism, thanks to a lifetime of teachers and parents and grandparents and many extraordinary role models, including many of you, my dear congregants. My identity has been shaped around covenantal Judaism. It is what Rabbi Soloveitchik, David Hartman's primary teacher, refers to as the covenant of destiny, as opposed to a covenant of fate. My eyes are constantly set on the peak of Mount Sinai and deliberately turned away from the depths of the abyss of Auschwitz. And yet, Rabbi David Hartman's son, Rabbi Daniel Hartman, now in the aftermath of the massacre of October 7th, picks up this conversation with his father who died years ago, and he wonders, it's not either or. We don't choose to be Auschwitz Jews or Sinai Jews. We are all both Auschwitz Jews and Sinai Jews. That is part of the reality that we have to grapple with now in the aftermath of October 7th and the dizzying events since then. And I resist it. I want you to know I resist it. But it's important to consider it. What is the ethical way forward? How do we live well and responsibly with eyes open and hearts open, even while being made the object of hatred and falsehood? Abraham's world, before he heard the call and set out, before he was commanded Lech Lecha, he was immersed in a world that was awash in idolatry, violence and falsehood, and hatred. And so God said, save yourself, Lech Lecha, carve out a path of righteousness and justice for your own sake, for the sake of your descendants, and let them learn that there is a God who sets a moral path of mitzvot that you can walk and bring as a blessing to all the world so that all can share in it. What do we do when we see idolatry in its ugliest forms? There is a story told of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. It's a haunting story, I warn you. A bit of a riddle, actually. There is the king of idolaters. Imagine the king of the stargazers, who is ruling over his people in a year when the grain that was harvested, the grain was tainted somehow. And anyone who would eat from that grain would lose their minds. What can we do, said the king. It's not possible to destroy the crop, for we do not have enough grain stored to feed the entire population. And so he called upon his chief stargazer and said, what shall we do? And the idolater said, perhaps we should set aside enough grain for ourselves, for the leadership, for the kings and the wizards. At least that way we can maintain our sanity. And the king replied, if we do that, then we will be the ones considered to be crazy by all the others who have lost their minds. If everyone behaves one way and we behave differently, then we will be considered the ones who are not normal. So rather, said the king, I suggest that we also eat from the tainted grain, like everyone else. However, here's where the king thought he was smart. In order to remind ourselves that we have lost our minds, we will put a mark of some sort on our foreheads so that even if we are insane, whenever we look at each other, we will remember that we are insane. I feel that I'm living in a very strange world right now. You're reading the same news I'm reading. I don't recognize it. Too many circles of people are eating the tainted grain of falsehood and lies for different reasons. It's not a simple story. Anyone who claims they know why, this is the reason why, I promise you, that's not the whole story. Rabbi Nachman of Breslov tells a haunting story. And what he doesn't say, the story ends there, but the moral of the story is obvious. The moral of the story is, for God's sake, don't eat the tainted grain. There must be another way. Use your moral compass, use your intellect, use your creativity, use your data points, use your intelligence. There must be another way. You can plant new grain, you can trade the goods you have with others so that you have enough healthy grain to eat and feed to your children. You can pick yourselves up and move to another place where there is healthier soil, healthier rainfall. My God, there must be another way. So this is the story of the Jewish people. For millennia, we refuse to eat the tainted grain of idolaters of all kinds. And we pay a price for that. We're able to see things in ways that others cannot see. We're able to see truths that others resist seeing. But it does come at a cost, at a painful cost. Today we look around our own city, our own neighborhood schools, our own universities, which are supposed to be places devoted to discovering truth and teaching truth and living by truth, and yet. And so we must continue to remind one another and to remind others too, do not eat the tainted grain. Also in our parsha, God says famous words to Avram through a vision. Al tira, Avram. Do not be afraid. And this is the last point I want to make. It is so easy to be afraid now. Al tira, Avram. Do not be afraid. I am a shield to you, God says. Magen Avraham. Magen David Adom. God says, I will be a shield. And your reward will be great. Good people, al tira'u, do not be afraid. Find your core confidence. Find your core courage. Find your true friends. One example, and there are so many now, I read about a Muslim shopkeeper in Lod, which is a depressed city, a poor city, a mixed city with great potential. And the Muslim shopkeeper asked a local rabbi to come and put up a mezuzah on the doorpost of his shop. He said, because I want every Jewish person who comes into my shop to feel protected. God bless him. So we have to find our core and lift each other up to be as confident and secure as we can be at this shaky, lonely time. The words I will conclude with now come from a song, also from 1983, actually, when the International Eurovision Songwriting Competition was held in Munich, Germany, of all places. And so the Israeli songwriter Ehud Manor heard about the competition, and he wrote a song specifically for the Israeli delegation to sing in Munich, Germany. Chai is the name of the song. Alive, we are alive. The song is a song of defiance. So we're going to sing it in just a moment. The pages are coming around now. Cantor Rosen is going to lead us. And I want you, whether or not you know the song, sing Yael by Bim Bum along with the melody. It's an easy melody. You'll catch it right away. These are the words. Listen, my brothers, I am still alive, and my 2 eyes are still raised to the light. Many are the thorns, but there are also many flowers, and ahead of me are years too numerous to count. I ask and I pray, it's good that Hatikva, the hope, was never lost. A psalm passes from generation to generation like a spring from long ago and on to eternity. I ask and I pray, it's good that Hatikva, the hope, is not yet lost. Alive, 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 yes, I am still alive. This is the song which grandfather sang yesterday to father, and today I sing it. I'm still alive, alive, alive. The people of Israel lives. Am Yisrael Chai. This is the song which grandfather sang yesterday to father, and the song that I will sing today. I'm just going to, let's sing first, and then I'll say,
Okay.
Go. It's so good. Thank you.
Please join us. Shimu Echai, Ani Hod Chai, Ushne Einai, Hod Nisot Laor, Rabbim Kochai, Ach Gam Prachai, Ulefanai, Shanim Rabot Mizvor, Ani Shoel, Mitpalel, Tov Shelo Avdad HaTikva, אני שואל ומתפלל, טוב שלא אבדה עוד התקווה. חי, 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 כן אני עוד חי, זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי, 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 עם ישראל חי, זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני פה מן ימיי, ולילותיי, ובשמי עמוד האש עוד קם, אשר בלי די, אפרוס ידיי, לידידיי, אשר מעבר ים. אני שואל ומתפלל, טוב שלא עבדו עד התקווה. חי, 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 כן אני עוד חי, זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי, 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 עם ישראל חי, זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני חי, אני עוד חי, ושתי עיני עוד נישאות לאור, אז כל החי, לך לא חי, ולבניך מבקשים לחזור. אני שואל ומתפלל, טוב שלא אבדה עוד התקווה. חי, 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 כן אני עוד חי, זה השיר של סבא, שר אתמול לאבא, והיום אני עוד חי, 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 אני עוד חי, חי, חי.
We testify to one another that we are alive. The Jewish people is alive. We are an eternal people. Despite it all, somehow, all the enemies fall away century after century. And we are still here to tell the tales because we are Sinai people, and because, yes, we are Auschwitz people too, and because God made a promise to Avram at the very beginning, the words we long to hear today. God spoke in a vision, took Avram outside and said, "Look to the heavens and count the stars if you are able." so many shall your descendants be. And Avram put his faith in Adonai.